Hey guys, so it's Mr. Chambers again. I wanted to do just another read aloud for everybody. Trying to do a little bit of fiction, a little bit of nonfiction, just kind of, spread it out, show you a variety of stuff. But this book, that I'm gonna do a read aloud on is called Queer by Belge and Marke. I guess it's Bieschke. I don't know, probably not pronouncing that right. But, so this is the second edition of the Ultimate LGBTQ Guide for Teens. I know they dive into it pretty readily here, but it's things have changed in terms of the LGBTQ community, even from when I was in school. It wasn't. I'm not saying it's easy for anyone today, but it was a lot tougher. And then the authors of the book, they grew up a little bit before me. They talk about how difficult it was. Most people didn't come out. Most people weren't able to kind of live their lives and be who they felt that they were. So I wanted to do a read aloud of this. I just thought there was some pretty important information there from just some people who kind of went through some of this stuff as kids themselves. So I'm going to read just the introduction and just chapter 1, or at least some pieces of it for this read aloud. So thank you guys. The world is changing so fast in terms of accepting and supporting queer people. When we were growing up, the world was a different place. We didn't know too many other queer kids or adults, and many people felt forced to lead their lives in the closet, keeping their true selves hidden. There were rumors, of course, like the ones about the two goth boys who spent every waking moment together, or about the supposed relationship between the gym teacher, Miss Mason, and the science teacher, Miss Lewis, but most people just weren't out the way they are now. Words like gay and queer were usually used as insults. The few brave kids who dared to take a same-sex date to the prom made the evening news. They still do in some parts of the country. With a little luck and a lot of pride, we both made it through. We found queer friends, queer loves, and careers as writers who teach the world about the awesomeness of queer life. Our paths weren't without a few struggles, and we had to deal with a lot of confusion and discouragement. But we couldn't change who we were, and we never gave up on following our dreams. We love our community and the strength and support it gives us, even if it can sometimes seem just as complicated and noisy as any other family. Being a queer or a questioning teen still has its ups and downs. You got to deal with coming out, trying to find your community, dating within a sometimes limited dating pool, and coping with discrimination from people who just don't get it. But if you're growing up queer today, you also have a lot to be excited about. Queer teens are coming out younger and younger, championing queer rights, starting up gay, straight alliances, or gender sexuality alliance clubs, both called GSAs for short, and most important, talking to each other about what it means to be gay, straight, bisexual, or transgender. You can look forward to getting married if you want, or you can build any kind of life you dream of. You're part of a whole new generation of queer and queer-friendly youth, and we wrote this book for you. Inside, we'll talk about what it means to be queer and guide you through the stages of coming out, finding your people, dealing with haters, and scoring dates. We'll also tell you some funny, and not so funny, stories about our own experiences of coming up into the world as queer people. And you'll get a taste of the rich legacy of queer art, humor, and history handed down from our queer forefathers, mothers, and others. Queer life can be marvelous, and you're about to find out how. Whether you're sure you're queer, wondering if you might be, or just want to know more about what it all means, this book is your ticket to a whole new rainbow-colored world. And it's signed off by the authors. Chapter 1. The Q word. Am I queer? If you're a teen, you have a lot on your plate. School, family, social drama, body issues, how to get that relative who perpetually smells like onions to stop sitting next to you at every family gathering. As if that weren't enough, some of you have one more thing to deal with: the possibility, or reality, of being queer. This realization is definitely not a bad thing, but it can throw you for a loop. To best grasp what may be going on, you're going to have to spend some time looking within. That doesn't mean staring at your belly button or pondering the cosmos, the existence of God, or what Kanye is going to say next, though if any of that is helpful, go for it. But you will need to do a little bit of soul searching. Lots of teens, straight and queer, have questions about their sexuality. Doesn't always feel clear cut from the start. Have you ever asked yourself any of the questions below? I'm a girl and I have a boyfriend, but I fantasize about kissing my best girlfriend. Does that make me bisexual? I think anyone can be sexy regardless of gender. What does that make me? I'm a girl and sometimes I feel more like a guy. Does that mean I'm transgender? I'm a guy and I keep having dreams about my girlfriend's brother. Am I gay? I don't feel I fit into any gender box. What does this mean? If so, you probably want answers. Well, here's the good news. You don't need an answer to this today. Don't ever feel you need to rush when it comes to matters of sexuality or romance. Here's the even better news. Whatever the answer is, it's completely fine. Being straight or gay or trans or queer doesn't define who you are as a person. It doesn't say whether you're a good friend or a complete jerk or whether you should go to ballet or go out for varsity football. It's just about who you're attracted to, and in the case of transgender people, which gender you identify with. Any answer is the right one, and it's also okay if that answer changes at some point. It's all good. What does it mean to be queer? To identify as queer means to see yourself as being part of the LGBTQ community. That means you consider yourself to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Here's the breakdown. Lesbian. There is no typical lesbian. Some lesbians are star athletes, others star students. Some wear lipstick and sundresses, while others prefer plaid and cargo shorts. Some wear their hair long, others cropped or shaved. The one thing that defines them all is that they are female-identified individuals who are romantically attracted to other female-identified people. Some lesbians might adopt a second label, such as butch or stud, which means they express themselves in what society might consider a masculine manner. Butch lesbians might feel more comfortable dressing in men's clothing, playing sports, working a traditionally manly job, or being the person who's more chivalrous in a relationship. Others might identify as femmes or prefer to dress in a more feminine manner, wear makeup and long hair, and enjoy activities more associated with girly girls, such as shopping or watching chick flicks. Of course, not all femmes wear lipstick, and not all butches work in hardware stores. Most people likely fall outside one of these definitions or might come up with their own identity, such as futch, a combination of femme and butch, blue jean femmes, a femme who doesn't wear dresses, and soft butches, those who consider themselves a less hardcore form of butch. Boy is another term which can indicate a hip, youthful butch who may or may not identify as trans. But remember that all of these are just labels that help lesbians clarify their social identity, and the definitions are changing even as we write this book. Not everyone uses these terms, and some people find that their relationships to masculinity and femininity change over the years. If none of these labels feel appropriate for you, feel free to make up one of your own, or go without a label altogether. These identities are really about celebrating yourself and your queerness, not bogging you down. On the queer frontier around 600 BC, sweet Sappho in the Isle of Lesbos. Back in ancient Greece on the Isle of Lesbos, women often got together and read poetry to one another about their mutual love and devotion. A woman named Sappho was one of these poets, and although most of her poetry has been lost, she became famous because of how often her work is referenced in others' poetry. We don't know for sure if Sappho was a lesbian, but many scholars believe she was and consider her to be the pioneer of lesbian literature. The word lesbian itself was born from the knowledge that strong communities of women lived on Lesbos, and the term sapphic is often used as a synonym for lesbian. Gay. Gay men are emotionally and sexually attracted to other men. The word gay is also sometimes used to mean homosexual in general. Back in the day, the word gay meant happy or carefree, as well as the more negative licentious, which means lacking moral and sexual restraints. People began using gay to describe homosexual people in the middle of the last century, though it's not totally clear why. Maybe people thought gay people were happy to supposedly have no moral restraints. Today, gay is usually used to describe homosexual men. There are lots of stereotypes about how gay men have to act and look, but in truth, there are as many kinds of gay men as there are music. Gay men can be large, hairy bears, or clean-shaven, skinny twinks. They can be rugged, gym-loving muscle queens, hip-hop b-boys, or soft, fashion-loving femmes. They can be into leather, or they can be church-going boys next door. None of these categories is mutually exclusive. You might be a little of some of these, or none at all. Identities and looks can say a lot about who gay men are to the world, and they are useful for finding others who may share your interests, but there's absolutely no reason to live your life by labels. A long time ago, the gay rights movement adopted the phrase, "We are everywhere," meaning there's no one way to be gay, and that stereotype shouldn't hold anyone back from being who they are or want to be. In Kathy's words, that explains it. How I knew I was a lesbian. As a kid, I kept falling in love with my best friends. Sure, I had crushes on guys, but when the opportunities came to be with them or a female friend, I always chose the girl. When I go back and read my old journal from high school, I have to laugh at what I wrote. There are entries that say things like, "I'm not queer or anything, but I don't want Lisa to get a boyfriend because we wouldn't be able to spend as much time together." Or, "We're not queer or anything, but I'd just rather be with Jenny than with Joe." Or, "I'm not turning to girls, I just really want to be close to Kim." Seriously. It's pretty obvious to me now that I was trying to justify what I was feeling because I was confused. At the time, I didn't really understand what it meant to be a lesbian, and the thought scared me. Lesbians were something we made fun of, and I didn't know anyone who was openly gay. When I got to college and started meeting other lesbians, I was finally able to admit to myself that I was queer. It was no longer some big scary thing because I was meeting some really amazing women who were lesbians. I got to see what lesbian relationships looked like and started going out dancing at lesbian bars, reading great lesbian books, and seeing lesbian movies. I became more and more comfortable with other lesbians and with myself. So by the time my first girlfriend, Lori, leaned in to kiss me, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Bisexual. Some people who are attracted to men and women call themselves bisexual, or bi. Sometimes people think bisexuals are equally attracted to both men and women, but this is not necessarily the case. If you're open to dating both men and women, even if you prefer one sex over the other, then you may identify as bisexual. Sometimes people identify as bisexual during a transitional stage before coming out as lesbian or gay. For others, it's an identity that truly feels right and that they find pride in for the rest of their lives. For some people, coming out as bi is easier because it offers hope to their homophobic parents and friends that they'll end up with an opposite-sex partner someday. For others, coming out as bi is harder because people might want them to choose one sex or the other. If you think you may be bisexual, know that bisexuality has been around forever. Some cultures, including ancient Greece, celebrated bisexuality as a great way of life. Pansexual. A little different from bisexuals, pansexual people are attracted to all genders across the spectrum beyond just men or women. They could be attracted to someone regardless of their gender. Pansexuality acknowledges the idea that gender is fluid. Some people simplify this by simply saying they are queer, but for others, the label of pansexual feels more descriptive. On the queer frontier, 1993, the dykes descend on D.C. Every year, usually the night before the gay pride parades, lesbian and female-identified folks take to their local streets in a procession of flowers, leather, motorcycles, drummers, and belly dancers to celebrate the awesomeness of being out in the world. These demonstrations are called dyke marches, and they got started in April 1993 when the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force sponsored a march on Washington for LGBTQ rights. To make sure that a lesbian presence would be felt, political activists known as the Lesbian Avengers planned to do a woman-only march the night before the main event. Word spread like wildfire, and more than 20,000 lesbians showed up to march together on April 24, 1993. That one event started an annual tradition that soon expanded to New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Toronto, and San Francisco. There was no stopping the liberated dykes of the world. Now, dyke marches are a tradition in many cities around the world. They'd helped us to reclaim the word dyke, which was once used to insult us and now means an out and proud lesbian. Transgender. People who feel there's a difference between the gender that they were assigned at birth and the gender they truly are inside consider themselves transgender, or simply trans. They often choose to live life as the gender they feel they are, or in some cases, they don't identify as any gender at all. Transgender people sometimes opt for medical treatment, such as hormones and surgery, to actually change their sex so that their bodies appear on the outside more like what they feel on the inside. People who undergo these medical procedures sometimes think of themselves as transsexuals. Since transsexual is sometimes seen as an impersonal medical term, though they often prefer to be thought of and referred to simply as the gender they are living as, male or female. Sometimes abbreviations are used for people who change their sex, including FTM, female to male, or MTF, male to female. People who feel they don't fit into either gender may use the terms genderqueer or gender fluid to describe themselves. They may feel that they are neither male nor female, both male and female, or somewhere in between. They may also feel that even saying there are only two genders is too restrictive, and may identify with one of the various genderqueer terms out there like trans boy, bigendered, or third gendered. It's important to understand that while the identities of lesbian, gay, and bisexual refer to one's sexual orientation, being transgender does not. It is specifically about gender. People who are transgender can be straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, or asexual. Non-binary. People who identify as non-binary do not identify as man or woman, or sometimes not solely as one of these two genders. Sometimes non-binary is an umbrella term for people who do not fit into male-female dichotomy. Others choose to identify as non-binary because they reject the notion of gender altogether. Some non-binary people use they, them pronouns, but not all do. Some have more than one gender identity. For example, they could be a non-binary and a woman. Some consider themselves trans, others do not. If you're not sure where you fit on the gender spectrum, or are sure you're somewhere in the middle, you may be non-binary. Cisgender or cis. Cisgender or cis people's gender identity matches the sex the doctor proclaimed them to be at birth. Cis people can be gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual, straight, or queer. For example, if you identify as female, and that's what the doctor put on your birth certificate, then you're cisgender, even if your sexual orientation is not exactly straight. Asexual, aromantic, demisexual. An asexual or aromantic person is someone who's not sexually attracted to other people, no matter their gender. Asexual people can still date, have relationships, masturbate, and even have sex. It's just that they generally identify with not being sexually attracted to others. Aromantics are not interested in romantic relationships with anyone, regardless of gender or orientation. Demisexual people are those who must form an emotional connection to someone before they can be sexually attracted to them. Demi means half, as in halfway between sexual and asexual. Queer. Queer can describe people who are any of the above, or people who don't want to use any of these labels but know they fall somewhere along the LGBTQ spectrum, or that they don't fit into the heterosexual norms. The word queer can sometimes have a political meaning. The first LGBTQ people to openly identify as queer were political activists who were deliberately reclaiming the word from homophobic people who used it as an insult. These activists changed the meaning from a negative one to a positive one. They used to chant, "We're here, we're queer, get used to it," as a rallying cry for social, economic, and racial equality as well as gay rights. If you find yourself wondering if any of the terms in this chapter describe you, you might be queer. Of course, you might also just be questioning, and that's okay too. These days, we often see the acronym LGBTQ with the Q at the end. That Q stands for questioning, which means people are still figuring it out. And are we all just trying to figure something out? The Q can also stand for queer. Sometimes people even write the LGBTQ acronym as LGBTQQ or LGBTQQI to cover both queer and questioning, and an I for intersex. See page 26. With all those letters to keep track of, sometimes it's easier to just say queer. All right, you guys, that is going to do it for this book. Again, this is Queer. It's by Belge and Marke Bieschke, I think is how you pronounce it. Like I said, man, I don't have all the answers about gender identity and sexuality. I try to inform and educate myself every day because I was brought up where a lot of this stuff wasn't okay. Like a lot of these words were just used as curse words and insults and things like that. So I'm just trying to branch out. I just hope people can kind of keep an open mind as well. So thank you guys. If you have any questions, if you're interested in looking for this book, it's on Sora. We may even have a copy in our library, but I'm not sure. I think it may just be an ebook. So thank you guys.